This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and it's that time of year again when we get to talk about the Muppets bashing Bitcoin. It's, of course, the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. And we have Warren Muppet and Charlie Muppet giving us their financial wisdom. And it turns out that Warren Buffett actually does not like Bitcoin still. He hasn't changed his mind. Buffett, of course, was a great monopolist, fiat food investor. He was very lucky when he started investing. First of all, his father was a U.S. senator. He also started investing when the stock market had traded in single-digit PEs. Over the years, he's profited massively from selling sugar water, rent-seeking banks that provide terrible, terrible customer service, selling puts on natural disasters. This is basically what his reinsurance companies have done, and hoping that these disasters didn't happen on his watch. So he has said that he wouldn't buy all the Bitcoin in the world for $25. This parody account from Twitter is pretty funny, saying Warren Buffett just said he wouldn't buy all the Bitcoin in the world for $25. This is because he does not know how to turn on a computer. If you're finding this video helpful so far, be sure to hit that subscribe and like buttons. This definitely is a guy that you don't want to take modern tech advice from. He finally got an iPhone in 2020. He did make some good money in Apple. I think he purchased it in 2016, but this was after more than a decade of bashing tech stocks. The other thing about Buffett you have to be careful of if you take his investment advice is that he's been underperforming. His company, Berkshire Hathaway, has been underperforming the stock market for more than a decade now. We can see here the return since 2008. The blue line here is just the S&P 500. The orange line is Berkshire Hathaway, and we can see that it's highly correlated to the stock market and yet somehow still manages to underperform it. So that's really the context you have to take for Buffett's comments on Bitcoin. And these were the comments he made on Saturday at the Berkshire meeting. He said, if you said that for 1% interest in all the farmland in the United States, pay our group $25 billion, I'll write you a check this afternoon for $25 billion. I now own 1% of the farmland. Likewise, if he's be willing to buy 1% of all the apartment houses in the country, people like Buffett are very happy for people to not own a house and to basically have a subscription business where they pay you rent every month. But if you told me that I could own all the Bitcoin in the world and you offered it to me for $25, I wouldn't take it, because what would I do with it? I'd have to sell it back to you one way or another. It isn't going to do anything. The apartments are going to produce rent, and the farms are going to produce food. Now, it's important to realize that these are terrible straw men. Buffett is not making a steel man argument against Bitcoin. He's making a straw man argument. If someone owned all the iPhones in the world, if someone owned all the cars in the world, obviously they wouldn't have any value either. And this is the same way with Bitcoin. Buffett is purposely ignoring network effects here. Obviously, if you want to have a circular economy, you have to have multiple people own something. So this is a straw man. He is making the point, of course, that Bitcoin is not a productive asset. This is true in a certain sense, but I think Buffett is being quite disingenuous here. He's obviously a genius. I'll give him that. He's a polymath, but he does know enough about economics to know what a monetary good is. And this is what Bitcoin is. Monetary goods do not need to produce food. They don't need to produce water or rent or interest income. They are monetary goods. They store value. They're used as a medium of exchange, a unit of account, etc. Buffett has long hated the world's most famous and oldest monetary good, which is gold. Nevertheless, gold, I believe, has really been outperforming Berkshire for the past 2 decades, really since 1999 or 2000. And Buffett has hated this monetary good, not because gold is worthless, but, and certainly Buffett knows gold's long history and how it used to be the standard for the world's money. But Buffett hates gold. In part, he's rebelling against his father. His father was a big gold bug. But he hates gold because the whole current fiat financial system that's enriched Buffett and Munger and the other people at Berkshire is built on the suppression of gold and exploiting money printing to enrich a small minority. And this is what Buffett obviously realizes. So those were Buffett's comments at Berkshire. Munger chimed in And these were his quotes from Saturday. "In my life, I try and avoid things that are stupid and evil and make me look bad in comparison to somebody else, and Bitcoin does all three. In the first place, it's stupid because it's still likely to go to zero. It's evil because it undermines the Federal Reserve System. Can you imagine a guy being so out of touch that he actually thinks the Fed is a good idea? And then, of course, third, it makes us look foolish compared to the communist leader in China. He was smart enough to ban Bitcoin in China. All these guys are secret fans of authoritarians because this is how they want to rule as well." So the bizarre thing about Munger's comment, of course, here is he says Bitcoin is stupid and it doesn't do anything and it's going to zero, but yet it doesn't do anything, but it's going to undermine the Federal Reserve. You can't have it both ways. Which way is it? The other hypocritical thing I think about this is Munger saying he tries and avoids things that are stupid and evil. I would argue that his entire career is built on doing evil things. He was the one who really got Buffett interested in Coke and helped convince him to pay a higher PE for it in the hope that the growth would outpace the high PE paid, and this turned out to be a very smart bet that enriched both of them. Unfortunately, it has not been good for the world. And Munger really does have, for someone who's always talking about cognitive bias and mental models, he's got a big block here where I think he unconsciously knows how much money he's made from selling Coca-Cola to small towns in Mexico, small towns in India. Here's an article from the New York Times talking about Coke is everywhere in this Mexican town, and there's very, very little water. You can read various reports about how companies like Coca-Cola have targeted developing countries, low and middle income countries. The really creepy thing, of course, though, is Munger has this famous speech or essay that he gave where he basically goes through and shows you how you can use all these mental models to come up with a company like Coke. And he's very conscious of the Coke business model. He talks about how if you're going to create a new global beverage, you need to push aside about a fourth of the world's water consumption and have people drink Coke instead. This is a brilliant essay. It's a quite evil essay, but you can read it. I'll link to it. I'll link to it below. The other thing is Berkshire Hathaway's empire is full of companies like I believe this is Clayton Homes, which exploits people, especially the working class, in terms of giving them high interest loans that they can't afford on mobile homes that depreciate and don't have the same characteristics as single family homes. And these are the kind of companies that Munger and Buffett are behind. And so I think it's quite hypocritical. There's a huge blind spot here. And a complete lack of awareness, of self-awareness, especially coming from someone like Munger, who has built his whole career talking about mental models and self-awareness. And for him to not see this is a huge, huge blind spot. Of course, they've been big investors in the U.S. banks, which have been probably some of the most worthless and evil companies around, causing giant financial crises by loading up on mortgages and mortgage derivatives back in the housing bubble in 2005 to 2007, which of course burst. And then all these companies were bailed out by money printing and by the Fed. Wells Fargo, for a very long time, has been doing lots of evil things, especially opening up fake accounts, laundering drug money, etc. You never hear Buffett and Munger come out and criticize this when Wells Fargo was their largest position, or one of their largest positions for decades. And I would submit that the real reason that Munger and Buffett, that these Muppets don't like Bitcoin, and the reason they offer such straw man arguments, and they're very smart guys. They're playing to the crowd, of course, at Berkshire, which tends to be on the older side. But it's too bad that we don't get their steel man arguments against Bitcoin, pretending that money isn't worth anything because if you controlled all of it, so if Buffett had all Bitcoin, it wouldn't be useful. Ignoring network effects, etc., is rather foolish. But I would say that the real reason that they don't provide steelman arguments against Bitcoin is because they actually do understand it. And they do understand that Bitcoin cannot be controlled by governments, it cannot be controlled by corporations like Berkshire, and it cannot be controlled by small groups of insiders like Buffett and Munger. Buffett and Munger have profited from the money printers. Bitcoin is rat poison, according to them. It really is rat poison to cantillionaires those who have benefited from the cantillon or cantillion effect, standing next to the Fed's money printers, all these monetary parasites that have stood next to the money printers for their entire lives. I'll link to this article about how Buffett gained from the bank bailout. But when you look at his big investments, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, it's all of these monopolist companies that offer very, very little value, that charge especially working class people outrageous fees, etc. So this is not the kind of legacy I'd be happy to go to the grave with. Buffett was a big champion of the 2009 Great Financial Crisis bailouts. He was also the leading beneficiary. So whenever they talk about Bitcoin as rat poison, you have to think of who the rats are. Wells Fargo, Citigroup, HSBC, Goldman Sachs, etc. Buffett and Munger, they understand what monetary goods are. They understand what gold is. They're too smart. They're too smart not to. So I think in addition to being hypocrites and doing straw man arguments against Bitcoin, there's something much more sinister going on here. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.